Alright, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. Welcome to the Retro Kill Count. Tonight, I'll be cracking open a kaiju classic, Gamera, the giant monster. Gamera has a strange history, and debatably an even stranger legacy. While nowhere near the heights of the king of the monsters in pop culture, at least here in America, actually probably in Japan too, he at many times rose to the same level and even surpassed Godzilla in quality. I mean, he was on The Simpsons like 3 times for God's sake, and the Heisei trilogy is considered to be some of the best tokusatsu media out there. So I'll be covering all the films eventually, probably most of them. But for now, I'll be starting with the original underdog from 1965. This movie was an uphill battle to fight against the rise of television in the early 60s, which is a tale as old as time, or at least television. Plus a low budget and faulty props, it was a tough one to make. Now, Daiei was a relatively prestigious studio before Gamera, producing a lot of samurai films like Rashomon and Gate of Hell in the 50s, both of which are Criterion Collection level films. And they had a franchise from the early 60s, which is Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman, probably pronounced it super fucked up, but spanning 26 or so sequels. But that wasn't enough. They had to compete with the king of the monsters in the golden age of kaiju. Although it wasn't even their first tokusatsu venture, having produced the critically acclaimed Warning from Space, and some other stuff like The Invisible Man vs. the Human Fly, which yes, I have to watch, because that sounds fucking amazing. Gamera was a gamble, but will it pay off? Well, yeah. But will there be kills? You better fucking believe it. The movie begins in the Arctic, with Dr. Hidaka and his party driving up to some Eskimos on a soundstage. These huts look like plaster, or drywall or something. It really shows this movie's budget, but at least there's no brown face. Yet. Anyways, our characters are part of an expedition team researching stuff and things, but we don't get to learn much about it before we see some jets. They popped up earlier and get noticed by a whole bunch of people, including the ship they arrived on and the US military.
Have you spotted anything on your radar screen?
No, sir. It must be coated with anti-electric wave paint, sir.
Okay.
Naturally, because of very relevant Cold War tensions, a bunch of fighters get scrambled by the US. Remember, this was only a couple years after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And speaking of the US, I guess now I should talk a little about Gamera, the Invincible. Now it's 2 M's. The alternate American cut was produced with American actors by Sandy Frank, in a style similar to the original Godzilla. It's been mislabeled as public domain and made into a lot of these shit-ass 50 movies in one box sets, alongside a few of its sequels, always in this shitty pan-and-scan TV format. And the weird thing is that this movie already has scenes with Americans. The scenes replacing them are nearly identical, but there's some extra UN stuff and other small things, including this clip I'm about to show, but it's nowhere near the integration King of the Monsters had.
Oh, Dr. Contraire, every time you bray, you make a bigger jackass of yourself.
Jules, please, we're on the air.
Mr. Standish, I demand an apology. I've devoted my life to science.
Gentlemen,
You won't get no apology from me, Contraire. I prefer to
You have no scholarships to back your arguments. You have no arguments, only invective. Read Virgil's Laocoon. Read Paradise Lost.
The ravings of a lunatic.
This is original Skeletor voice actor Alan Oppenheimer, by the way, in a scene where he debates the existence of Gamera. A few scenes are moved around or outright removed, with the whole romance subplot being deleted, and Toshio being less relevant, but I'll get to them when I get to them. Anyways, the US fighter intercepts the Soviet plane and shoots one down, causing it to crash and kill the pilot, giving us our first kill, while also detonating a nuclear bomb, but for some reason our cast isn't super concerned about it. But more importantly, it releases the ancient, dreaded title card from the ice, and our title monster, Gamera, spelled as 1 M. Now the name Gamera was originally Kamera, Kame being turtle, and Ra being like the Japanese version of the Zilla suffix. But it was tweaked to Gamera, because calling your monster Camera is stupid, and being Turtle Zilla in English is even more stupid. Before the team leaves, they get a rock with some Gamera lore, apparently linking him to Atlantis. Anywho, their ship is being attacked by Gamera now, and we learned that everyone on the ship died, so I have to count like 28 people. at least from what I could tell. There's lots of reused extras running around, and maybe some numbers changed between shots, and I'm guessing these people running away are not the same people from inside the ship. I'll assume everyone either drowned, burned, or died off screen. Later, plane investigating the scene confirms this, but misses a giant turtle, like his bulky ass could hide anywhere. Oh, and just a note later, they mentioned 7 photographers who died as well, off screen, so I included those as well. Dr. Hidaka appears on this news thing to exposit about Gamera, mentioning that he survived an atomic bomb, and therefore needs to be studied for science, which, sounds familiar. And if a giant fire-breathing reptile wasn't enough, now there are UFO sightings all over the place. We get a scene on a plane where the photographer mentions that he only left the ship to spend time with Kyoko, meaning she's the reason he lived, and it sparks some romance between them. They also mourn those lost for a bit. By the way, as far as actors go, I don't have much to say. Eiji Funakoshi, who plays Dr. Hidaka, was in Fires on the Plain and Blind Beast, and showed up in one of its sequels. He's a bit more famous, but there isn't much to say about anyone else, at least as far as I'm aware. Japanese cinema isn't my strong suit. Director Noriaki Yuasa would go on to direct most of the other Showa-era Gamera films, minus vs. Baragon. He also did The Snake Girl and The Silver-Haired Witch, as well as some of Ultraman 80 and, Cosplay Warrior Cutie Night 2, I guess. He was essentially hired because no one else wanted to do it, and he held a special effects experience. Although it was only his second film after his first movie, I forgot to write down what it was, but it wasn't anything that special. Well, it bombed. Now, if you thought something like that was a tangent, well, let's go to Hokkaido. I hear they have scallops or something. There we have this kid named Toshio, who's obsessed with turtles. Draws them, brings them to school, probably wants to eat one. I mean, we all have our intrusive thoughts. He's got typical kid troubles. Dad had to move for his job as lighthouse keeper, which could be going way worse, just ask Winslow. His mom died when he was little, and now his sister and dad want him to get rid of his pet turtle. So he sets Pee-wee free and settles in for a night on the cliff. Damn, this is kind of pretty, and what the fuck is that, turtle? Yeah, so in perfect irony, Gamera shows up, disappears, and then pops up again like his bulky ass could hide anywhere. Anyways, Toshio realizes Gamera is a turtle and runs up the lighthouse to try and, well, I don't know what his plan was, but Gamera knocks down the lighthouse, and as Toshio falls, he's saved by Gamera, in a moment so out of character, it would shape the rest of the franchise and make this movie seem really out of place. So Gamera's next sighting is near a geothermal power plant, so the trio are rushed there right away to get planning. Dr. Hidaka is a big Godzilla fan, so he thinks they could use high-tension wires and the power plant's full output to electrocute Gamera. But he didn't pay much attention to the movie, so the plan fails and Gamera lays waste to the plant. Gamera was designed and sculpted by Masao Yagi. He worked at Toho as an assistant modeler on the original Godzilla, and after that mainly did concept art. After Gamera, he would work on Ultraman and a ton of other things. This was his first major job too, and he spent countless nights in a prefabricated workshop set up in his garden, with help from his father, who had to work in secret because of the contract with Toho. Gamera was built with tatami mats at first, with scales made of latex reinforced with linen. At this point it was kinda known how to make a monster suit, but it was still so heavy that it had to be worn by bodybuilders, and even they didn't last long. Now, in classic monster movie fashion, Gamera shows a new ability. He actually eats fire, which is why the nuclear bomb only woke him up. So he consumes the flames from the destroyed plant, using simple reverse footage, and unlike Godzilla films where the fire was simulated with mist or optical effects, they actually built a goddamn flamethrower into Gamera's mouth, with propane and everything. They rigged it up to squirt gasoline, which would be ignited by a pilot light and travel 3 to 4 feet, which naturally caused multiple fires and burned the model at multiple points. The thing actually erupted into flames, which, yeah, checks out. That would happen. Things get so bad the military tries to call in nukes, which is a bafflingly stupid move. Luckily, this is called off when Dr. Hidaka comes up with a new plan. Oh, and Toshio is here, by the way. The new plan is to freeze Gamera. However, the bombs only last 10 minutes, so the plan within the plan becomes to flip him over on his back. I'm pretty sure that also might have been a happy accident, I think. I'm not sure, I missed that part. It's a pretty silly plan, but it is the 60s, so hey, it works.
おい見ろガメラのやつ手足を引っ込めたぞ手も足も出ないとあのことさ
He flies now. He flies now? He flies now. Yeah, so in possibly the wackiest moment of the film, Gamera was actually the UFO from earlier. Remember that? The flying effect was inspired by fireworks, and it only sort of worked, since all the fire burned up the piano wires holding out the prop. Most of the time it was animated by hand. Who's in Paris? Gamera's in Paris. There's all sorts of things going wrong too. Fish dried up, there's tons of shipping accidents because of radio signal jams, and random flooding for some reason. So a team of Americans and Soviets is assembled to conduct Plan Z, a massive international effort to stop Gamera for good. But that's going to take a while, so I may as well mention another thing about the American cut of this movie. There's an original surf rock theme song that plays at the beginning of this movie and in this club around this point. It's kind of a jam. Anyways, it's time for a rampage. Gamera starts things off by attacking an airport, killing 7 people by ramming full force into the tower. And possibly a bunch of other people appear, but I can't be certain. Next spot is this nightclub where a bunch of youngins are partying. They refuse to evacuate, so I better start fucking counting. It's so hard with how this copy of the film looks. The image is so dark and washed out that at a certain point I'll just use a shitty pan scan version. Like, at least it's actually black and white and not just blue and blue. Anyways, 3 band members plus 5 cops plus 28 club patrons, at least from the widest shot I could find, all crushed. And then 13 people here are pretty blink and you'll miss it, and I assume the 9-ish people here are crushed. Next to these 11 people are running around in a composite shot, and they get roasted. And while they could be some of the same people, I honestly don't really know or care that much. Gamera then tears down Tokyo Tower and crushes these 3 people, I guess. And then 23 people in this building are crushed or burned alive, at least from my best count. Alright, I need a break, so here's a tangent. These models were, I believe, reused from Daiei's previous attempt at a kaiju film, Giant Horde Beast Nezura, a movie about a swarm of rats invading Tokyo, inspired by The Birds. The film used actual live rats on miniature sets, but since these were rats grabbed off the street, they were disease-ridden with fleas and ticks, and the health department shut down production and had all the rats burned alive. There's a movie called Nezura 1964 if you want to know more about it. Anyways, now Toshio ran off to try and save Gamera, and now they have to distract Gamera using tankers of fuel. You ever think about how much fuel and stuff is used for movies like this? Anyways, Toshio jumps out of the tanker to try and talk to Gamera, and a worker tries to save him from, blowing up. Luckily, both of them make it out, unscathed. Anyways, Plan Z is in full swing. Also, Toshio tried to stow away, as if he hadn't endangered enough people. And for some reason, he's permitted to stay. I'm sure his sister's here, but what's she gonna do? Now, what is Plan Z? Well, igniting a trail of gasoline to lure Gamera to the island. Toshio tries to stop this, but coincidentally it starts to rain, which puts out the fire. Luckily, the reporter, remember him, comes up with an idea to lure Gamera on shore by making a huge bonfire. That still doesn't work. Man, what are they gonna do now? Oh, cool. So anyways, it's time for Plan Z. By the way, I like his funny walk here. The perspective is so off, and he looks kinda small. The plan was to shoot that fucker into space. and it works. But doesn't kill Gamera, since we still have several sequels before that happens. Kyoko and the photographer get together, and Toshio is there.
Gamera! Sayonara!
Okay, time for the numbers. We had a total of 131 kills, at least to my best counting, giving us a kill on average every 35.7 seconds. I'll say the coolest kill was the airport. Gamera just rams full force into it, and the effects are pretty cool, and Gamera being seen through the window before it just kind of adds to it. It's some brutal flying type destruction. Lamest kill was the photographers, killed off screen. Anyways, that was Gamera. It was a massive hit at the box office despite all expectations, and so it spawned a massive franchise. I like this movie. It's not the best the series has to offer by a long shot, but it's got great monster action, really impressive effects for the budget, and while it loses track of its characters, and there's too many characters, and the whole plot is just kind of a mess, and very derivative of Godzilla, it's still pretty good, but I'll get to the other films some other time. For now, this has been the Retro Kill Count.